The healthcare showdown. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jackie Borchert, State House reporter for Cleveland.com, Daryl Rowland, Public Affairs Editor for the Columbus Dispatch, Sam Gresham of Common Cause Ohio, and Mark Weaver, Republican strategist. The role of government in our healthcare system has been the talk of the nation and Washington this past week. As we record this Friday afternoon, apparently the House has delayed a vote on the GOP healthcare bill. Whether or not they vote this weekend, they may or may not, and the news may have changed by the time you see this broadcast. So let's focus on the big picture. The big picture, the fundamental argument is, what is the proper role of government in our healthcare system? Jackie Borchert, that really is what it comes down to. Should we mandate folks buy health insurance? Should we mandate insurance companies provide this kind of coverage? That's what it's coming down to in this House debate.
That's right, and we saw this week the American Health Care Act, which is the GOP answer to repeal and replace Obamacare, which was introduced just 3 weeks ago. There were some changes made this week to try and strike a compromise with some of those Republicans who feel as though the bill didn't go far enough to accomplish those goals that you mentioned.
So it comes down to, Daryl, things like, should someone who is in their 50s be required to buy insurance for childbirth coverage or things like that? And that's because if you don't need that, maybe your premiums will be lower.
Right, and there are the two schools of thought. One is that, everybody pays for everything, and that's sort of part of the financial model. And the other is, just mandating that base level of comprehensive health care. Again, it's wherever you're liberal, you're conservative, you're going to come down different places on that.
No. Mike, the answer to your question is unequivocally no. And
No
to the
Democrats are saying these days.
No to the factor of whether government should be involved. There is no free market-based healthcare system in the world. No. So therefore, government has to be involved.
Yeah, but that's not true, though. I mean,
Where?
we know that when people have choices, that quality goes up and cost goes down. So government takes away choices. There might not be a 100% completely free market program, but people in America like to be able to choose their own doctor.
That doesn't.
People in America like to be able to decide whether they want this kind of coverage or that kind of coverage.
But that doesn't work in healthcare.
Sure it does.
No, it does not.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Unless you want a single payer system where government pays for
understand
everything.
healthcare in the simplest form. Yeah. It's a bet. It's a bet whether you have a car accident or whether you get sick.
You mean healthcare insurance, right?
Healthcare
right,
insurance.
Sure.
It's a bet.
It is.
So they don't want people who are already sick.
Individuals
they're
can
going to
choose
get
their own level of risk for what they want to cover, and an older man in his 60s shouldn't have to buy coverage for pediatric dental insurance if he doesn't have kids who do that.
But the question is, can we afford to insure a man who is 60 if someone who in their 20s and 30s doesn't think they need coverage for prostate cancer? That's much more, it's expensive. They help subsidize the 60-year-old's care for prostate cancer.
Part of this core question is, do we trust individuals to make decisions for themselves, or do we think that government and politicians and bureaucrats can make better decisions?
I don't think you want to ask that
And I do trust people to make decisions for themselves.
How many people driving without insurance?
Well, in that case, when they're driving without insurance, if they get in a car accident, they're going to affect me.
Right.
And which is why I carry no-fault insurance and no insurance coverage.
And having this higher level discussion is all well and good, but then when you get down to the nuts and bolts of what some of these essential benefits are that some of these lawmakers want to scrap, I mean, in addition to pregnancy and newborn care, you have mental health, prescription drugs, emergency room services, outpatient care, preventative care, which is a huge thing for people no matter what age you are. So when you start getting into the details and people start thinking about how it affects them in their own situation, that's where I think you have a lot of the discord around this plan, because it hasn't, those pieces haven't been well vetted.
Daryl, it seems like the Republican plan, the way to control costs is to give folks choice so they can get a premium or an insurance policy with a lower premium that has fewer choices. But there's nothing being discussed about price control on healthcare services, prescription drugs, at least not among Republicans anyway.
Well, there's a bit of a pig in a poke, as we used to say out in the country, on this, in that there's going to be phase 2 and phase 3 of some of this coming down the line. Supposedly, some of this is going to be addressed. Again, assuming phase one has a life beyond, when we're speaking right now. Yeah. But we can talk about all this high-minded healthcare policy, but this kind of comes down to politics. And this comes down to Donald Trump wanting his way. And it appears he has a major political defeat right at the front end of his presidency here. And this could affect future policies, immigration, tax reform, what have you now. People are voting against the president's wishes. And whether they suffer consequences for that or not, they have made that calculation apparently. And I think that changes things in Washington.
Mark, this is very similar to the debate over Obamacare when that lasted a year or so. And there was Democrats who wanted the single payer, wanted the public option, and those were the far left Democrats, and the more moderate Democrats said, no, let's go with a hybrid. Republicans, it's the same way. They want no Obamacare at all. They want complete business, industry-based health insurance, and some want more of a hybrid.
I think that's true. I think the larger concern I have is this feels like a forced emergency. There's no need to bring this to a vote unless the votes are there. The legislative process is supposed to take a while. Donald Trump didn't promise to have Obama repealed and replaced by the third month of his presidency. He promised to have it repealed and replaced, which means you need to take the time necessary to build a coalition, and then you bring it to the floor. I think that's probably what's going to eventually happen.
But he implied it would be like on day one.
Well, that's right. And lots of politicians imply lots of things about what they're going to do when they get there, and then lots of politicians find out that it's harder than they think.
Especially with his, I don't know if flippant is the right word, but we're going to insure everybody.
Right.
I mean, I don't know, is that still, or is that non-operative?
With better
as they
coverage.
say?
But Mark,
And lower prices.
Yeah.
the difference is campaigning and governing.
Sure.
There is a big difference between the two. One of the things people said, I don't want a politician. I want somebody who's going to go into Washington and shake it up. And I respond, he or she does not know what to shake up because they don't know anything about Washington. So how do you go in there and shake it up? I think, Mike, one of the things that's happening here is that he doesn't understand the governing process nor the political process. And I'll also say another thing to you. The Republicans have not passed a significant piece of legislation in almost 10 years. They haven't. They've been 72 votes on Obamacare, but they haven't moved. And all these guys who are in Congress now are relatively new.
Is John Boehner what's John Boehner doing today?
Cutting
He's
his
watching
lawn?
this mess, and he gets
Apparently he's
forced
cutting
to
his lawn.
leave.
We get a camera on
Yeah.
John Boehner.
You know, I mean, I just
could
wonder
always
what he's
turn,
thinking.
The
turn
lawn
to the
cutting
John
camera.
Boehner channel and see what
John
he's
Boehner
doing.
was happy to leave the speaker's job because the Republican conference was split between the very conservative and the conservative, and Paul Ryan is now presiding over that. Now, I actually think Paul Ryan has a better chance of bringing people together, but it's not going to happen overnight. It takes some time. It takes some work.
Was healthcare the wrong issue to try to bring them together?
Well, I don't know about healthcare being the wrong issue. I know that it's happening too fast, and as a result, I think that's why we're where we are.
But they haven't had a chance to gel, build teams.
I agree.
The longer you've been in the Congress or the General Assembly together, the better you work together.
true.
And the leadership can figure out what you want and what you want, and we go cut these deals, and before we go public, everything is done. All right, and this group, I don't think they really understand how to do that.
We have a Republican officially running for governor while we wait for Mike DeWine, John Husted, and Mary Taylor to decide for sure. Congressman Jim Renacci has officially announced he wants to be Ohio's chief executive. Renacci is a successful Northeast Ohio businessman who now serves in Congress. He is running on his Ohio business record and as an outsider. Darrell Rowland, he's been called the Trump candidate in this race. Is that too simplistic? Is there any truth to that?
Well, of the four, he would probably be the most Trump-like, I would say.
Of the four Republicans?
Yes. Well.
No Democrats are Trump-like.
Sure. Sure. And I think that, the discussion of Congressman Renacci bleeds over from what we were just talking about health care. Just a couple hours before we took our seats here, he was making his statement about how he hated the process that this health care bill was going through. But he was convinced it was a binary choice. He ran against Obamacare to repeal Obamacare, so he was a yes vote. So he was, he did, but his side obviously did not prevail in that debate, or has not yet. We'll put it that way. So it's interesting. And, some Columbus folks with good memories who read the back pages of the sports section may remember him as involved with the Columbus Arena Football League, the Destroyers, back in the day, and was involved in an aborted attempt, if you will, to try to bring legitimacy or financial status to that operation, not just in Columbus, but big picture. In fact, some of the commentary I got from the Democrats, well, this guy's running on his business record. Well, he sure didn't do anything with the Arena Football League.
Renacci has an interesting problem. He has been running saying, look how close I am to Donald Trump.
Right.
I was one of the first people to endorse him. The problem is Donald Trump wants Renacci to vote for this Obamacare replace and repeal, and the far conservative part of our party wants him not to. And so his first major challenge is, will he please Donald Trump, who he says he's close to, or will he please the Americans for Prosperity and the other conservatives, who are Jim Jordan types, who are saying do not vote for the Trump bill?
But Jackie, he's not in this the Tea Party wing of the House. He's maybe close, but he's not in that group with Jim Jordan.
Right, right. He's not in the. I don't believe he's a member of the Freedom Caucus, and the Trump candidate, it's more on his personal background as a businessman, as somewhat of a political insider when you lump him with the other three. He was elected to Congress in 2011.
He served as a mayor of Wadsworth
Right.
at one point.
And his website is ohiofirst.com. Instead of draining the swamp, it's clean up Columbus. So already some of those trends are coming, and I think the real he's got this initial test here, and we'll see how closely he remains aligned to Trump, and how that changes as Trump's presidency matures, or as his approval rating goes up or goes down. I mean, that could be a detriment to him in 2018.
But Darrell intimated to something that's important. His entrepreneurial track record is not really that great with regard.
Made a lot of money.
Yeah, he's
Well,
been a
he didn't
do well
successful
in the Arena
person.
Football League, but
He's coming from a different angle than the other candidates are, and so I think Jim Renacci is going to have a lot more support than people think. I think he's got a lot of people who are gathering together, raise money for him. This may well be a three-way race for governor, not four, and I don't think Renacci will be the one who drops.
Doesn't that help him though if he's the Trump person, and say it's Mary Taylor and Mike DeWine? Don't they split the
It does
establishment
help
vote?
him, but he can't be the Trump person and have Trump say good things about him if he won't vote the way Trump's asked him on this
and
healthcare
Trump
replacement.
won't support it. Husted. I think this moniker, "Let me be like Trump," is going to be short-lived, because I don't think Trump is going to be that supportive, successful. So I'm not sure if you want to hang your hat on that.
We'll see, it's
Democrats
a Republican
ran-
primary, though, remember.
Yeah, but Democrats ran saying in 2016 that we want to run against Trump. There's no way people will vote for Trump. Do Democrats run the same risk saying, okay, we hope the Trump guy wins because Trump will be unpopular and nobody will vote for him?
I think that's a scenario you would want to consider, but I would want to consider the candidate. He or she can paint themselves any way they want to. I have a right to try and paint them as who I think they are too. So I don't care what they say about themselves and the comparison that they draw. I'll go after them my way.
I'll also just add that Renacci has outside of Northeast Ohio, he's somewhat of an unknown property, where Mary Taylor, John Husted, Mike DeWine, people know enough about them to have formed. A lot of people know enough about them to form an opinion. So, I mean, I don't know if I were a Democrat, I don't know if I would prefer the known or the unknown there.
Darrell, do all three of those other candidates stay in the race? If you had to guess.
Boy, that's hard to envision. The thing is, they're all term limited. They have to go somewhere. There's already talk if Renacci, hey, they're politicians. What,
That's right.
You think they're going to get a real job?
I don't think they have. I don't think they have an alternative. That's why carnage is coming. Where'd that word come from? Carnage is coming. This is the OK corral for the Republican Party. And if the Democrats are smart, this is the last stand. Let this occur. Get your team together and be prepared to move into it.
Well, there's going to be a lot of people drawing parallels with 1990, and that's when Bob Bennett stepped in, and Bob Taft and George Voinovich were going to go head on, and then just who knows what. Like most party leaders, Bob Bennett did not want a primary, so he convinced Bob Taft to drop down, spend 8 years in Secretary of State's office, and they got 16 years straight in the governor's office.
These are different times. Party leaders have less strength than they once did, and the Ohio Republican Party is largely split right now.
So chances of a
I
compromise.
don't think it's going to happen.
Game's on. In essence, there's going to be a competition.
Yeah, I think so.
Try as they might to stay out of the limelight, some judges continue to spark controversy. The latest case involves Supreme Court Justice Sharon Kennedy. She recently was the keynote speaker at a fundraiser for the anti-abortion group Ohio Right to Life. In the coming months, the Supreme Court will decide a case on whether a Toledo abortion clinic should be forced to close. Abortion rights activists say the speech shows bias, and they call for Kennedy to recuse herself from that case. Kennedy says she won't. She says the speech was no different than other appearances she makes before what she calls civic organizations. And she says the speech did not focus on abortion, but on the Ohio Constitution. Mark Weaver, putting aside the relative excitement of that speech, was it wise for her to speak before this group?
A lot of people don't know that part of the Code of Judicial Conduct is that judges are required to educate the public about the judicial system, which means they're supposed to give speeches. And they're supposed to give speeches to lots of groups. If you speak in front of the Chamber of Commerce, you know what? There are business people in the audience who might have cases in front of the court. If you speak in front of a labor union, you know, they may have a case in front of the court. And so if you are saying the same thing to these different groups, doesn't matter what group you're in front of, I think Justice Kennedy did not need to recuse herself, but I'm not the only one who thinks that. Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, who's not particularly close to Justice Kennedy on the bench, has come out publicly and said that Justice Kennedy did the right thing.
This was a fundraiser, though. Does that make it different? If she was just invited to speak in front of a group, but this was a keynote speech at a fundraising event, which assisted a political action group.
Well, I mean, justices are allowed to actually speak at political events. I mean, that's right within the Code of Judicial Conduct. Remember, we elect our justices, and what the U.S. Supreme Court has said, that when you elect judges, you can't have laws that treat them differently than other politicians. Having said that, a judge can't take a position on an issue, can't make a promise that they're going to vote that way on the bench. And so while they're allowed to speak their mind about their opinions, they can't commit to a certain outcome.
But isn't there a correlation between your opinion and your decision making?
Yeah, that's why we elect judges, right? And that's why some people will vote based on judges, based on what their opinions are. What Justice Scalia said in a Supreme Court case involving issues like this was, if you're going to elect judges, you're going to get judges who are politicians. And if you don't like that, stop electing judges.
Jackie, this goes to, I mean, we've seen this when Donald Trump was criticizing judges, and President Obama criticized the Citizens United decision, and the Gorsuch hearings this week, trying to get him to answer a question. I mean, what is the proper role of a judge? And it just seems like it's a very squishy, we want it both ways.
Yeah, squishy I think is a good term for that, because you know, as Mark said, they are politicians, but at the same time the public expects them to be impartial and unbiased and you know, really rule on the law, and so that's kind of where it gets squishy. But you know, also in that code of conduct, there's you know, the judges are required to act in a manner that promotes public confidence and integrity in the office. And I think that's kind of maybe where this criticism of Justice Kennedy is coming from, and the mere appearance of bias. You know, as a civic-minded organization, sure, the Chamber of Commerce, I'm not so sure that a pro-life focused organization in Toledo, where the court had just decided to hear a case in Toledo. I mean, I'm not saying that she was wrong. I don't think that she needs to recuse herself, but just to avoid that appearance of bias, you know, several judges probably would have made the decision to just cancel that appearance.
Let me, as an editor, I mean, I would not have allowed a reporter to speak to a political group like this, even if they were talking about journalism. And if I found out they had, that reporter likely wouldn't be able to report on, say, the abortion issue in this case. Would you agree with that? Can judges be held to that same standard?
Well, to be real honest with you, this is not just a hypothetical question to us at the Dispatch. I mean, journalists, I don't know if this is like justices or not, but it's pretty much somebody offers us a speaking engagement, we'll go try to spread the gospel, you know. I personally have spoken at Democratic and Republican events, but a couple of years ago, my editor and I, you know, something we'd done every year, we'd gone to, in this case it was a Republican event, and it was used as a fundraiser, and like we were sort of billed as, you know, come here, these guys from the Dispatch, and pay your $50 or whatever. I can't imagine they would have raised a whole lot of money, but then it got sticky. And then at that point we pulled out. So it does get sticky. But yeah, judges, as Jackie says, we want it both ways. You know, think back to 2014 when Judge Judy French, then on the Franklin County Court of Appeals, was running for the Supreme Court, and at campaign events for Governor Casey running for re-election, talked about, elect me, elect the Republican ticket, and I'll be the backstop.
Yeah,
to
that was
so
imprudent. I think she'd like to get those words back. That was imprudent.
Yeah, but I think the whole discussion is hypocritical. People do have biases. People do have preferences.
That's right.
Nothing's wrong with that. It's a
right.
part of being a human being. I personally, I would like to know, what are your biases, so that when we go into this discussion, I understand which side of the coin you're on coming in. But also the other thing about biases and preferences, they change. You know, I once read a book that said what was true in the morning of your life is a lie in the evening. As you mature, as you experience things, they change. So your biases are relevant now, but sometimes longer, it may be
Remember,
irrelevant.
here that wasn't about the message, it was about where she spoke. And if she gave that same speech to a variety of different groups, it really ought not matter who's in the audience. What matters is what they're saying.
But I do think she should recuse herself on this subject.
Should we be, one more question, then we'll move on to the next one. Should we be allowed, should politicians, leaders be allowed to criticize judges and their decisions? Seems like that's been,
Oh, certainly.
I mean, it seems like
yeah,
it's
now
taboo
lawyers have to be much more careful because we're bound by a code of ethics. But what Donald Trump said about the judge, when he called that judge a so-called judge, that is protected First Amendment speech. One branch can call another branch names. Now, legally, whether you can do something is a different question. But he was using his bully pulpit to register his discontent with that judge. That's perfectly fair game under our American system, whether you like it or not.
but
it's a
does it
different question.
undermine the separation of powers, as some have
Well,
argued?
no, because that's part of his powers. And then now judges are hamstrung, and they can only speak in their opinions. But when they do, they can also say what they think about the executive branch, and they often do.
But Mike, not only what he said has an effect, but you have an opinion of him now, whatever he said about that person.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to our last topic. The Columbus Division of Police is in recovery mode after it deleted about 100,000 police cruiser videos earlier this month. Police Chief Kim Jacobs called the deletion a significant loss, but said it was an accident.
While we don't think it's going to have a big impact on prosecutions, we did believe that it was important to say this now rather than waiting for somebody else to discover it. We believe that transparency means acknowledging our mistakes. I take full responsibility for the fact that one of our division employees made this mistake. We'll find out what the bottom line of it was, why it happened, and the impact that it will have on our processes.
Those processes will become even more important because the deletion comes as Columbus police are starting to collect video from body cameras worn by police officers. Sam Gresham, what's your thoughts on this? Computers make mistakes happen.
I feel sorry for the chief, but they woke up the 800-pound gorilla now. The question is, what is all this data being used for before, and how do we as activists begin to use this data? Now, technically, I have a question. There's no cloud backing this whole thing up. You know, in a lot of systems, people, everything is recorded somewhere. I understand how it could be done, but we in the activist community now are really concerned that if this can happen this easily, supposing there's something in there very important, and we go, oops, again?
Yeah, you do wish they had double backups for that. I had two thoughts. I thought as a crisis communications expert, I like how they got ahead of the problem, were honest about it. That was smart. It was a smart thing to do. But as a lawyer who practices in the public records area, I'll say this: they dodged a bullet because a few years ago the legislature capped the damages that somebody can get for suing when records are deleted. It used to be $1,000 a record with no cap, up into the millions, but just a few years ago they capped it at $10,000. So if somebody chooses to sue about this, the most they'll collect is $10,000. But a couple of years ago, they could have sued for $1,000 per individual record, and with a multi-million-dollar payout had the law not changed.
Does this affect prosecutions, drunk driving, drug possession cases?
Yeah, but it also sets up, and I don't want to leave my point. If there's a vital piece of information there on the system and somehow it disappears in a critical public case, not a good idea. So what I recommend to the police chief is get a backup system right now so that this issue is not raised again.
Cleveland already has the body cameras. Anything similar up there, Jackie?
With 1,000 videos being deleted?
Delete
No.
problems with storage or deletion?
No, but I think it also raises another question of, who has access to these records and what are the procedures that they have. That it sounded like it was, a single employee.
Put it in the wrong folder.
That he was renaming files or something like that. Right, and so if it could happen, did that person? It just raises a whole bunch of
I just
questions.
think it was a mistake to have Hillary Clinton running their files at the
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we'll get to our final off-the-record parting shots, and Mark Weaver has another one.
A lot of Ohioans were upset to see a sitting judge, Tim Horton, sent to jail for 10 days for illegal activities. It's unheard of to have a judge go to jail. A lot of people think he ought to step down. That would be the right thing to do. He should resign his judgeship.
Sam.
I think the most difficult thing that's coming in the future is the perception of health care. I think as a result of all of this discussion, we're going to have a better health care system in the future.
Daryl.
John Kasich's been beat up for a lot of things this year, especially over his budget. But I think we're going to see maybe a change in one of those areas. He just basically flat funded his anti-drug effort, even though he was one of the earliest ones in the country to recognize the problem and get out ahead of it. He's not really doing much more now than he was, 2-3 years ago. I think that's going to change, certainly. I think they're realizing they're taking a hit on that.
Okay. Jackie.
A new report this week draws attention to the fact that poverty is not necessarily what everybody thinks it is. And, I was surprised to see that more than a dozen Ohio college campuses have food pantries on them now for their students.
Wow. And as the Supreme Court confirmation vote comes forward, we want to hear a lot about the nuclear option. Only in Washington can making senators stop talking be called the nuclear option and compared to Armageddon. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. We're on Facebook and Twitter. You can connect to all of that at our website and see past episodes at wosu.org/COTR. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.